I am very, very, very excited to be here today because I have the incredible opportunity to open you up to total freedom from your past. Before we get started, I must ask you a very important question. Are you willing to let go of who you have become to be who you are? Who are you? If you don't know exactly who you are, start by asking yourself empowering questions such as, why am I here on earth? What is my purpose? What is my major contribution to this world? Nobody can tell you who you are. I can't tell you how many times in my life as a young child I had labels put on me. So, knowing that nobody can tell you who you are, I will promise you this. You matter, you are enough, and every single one of you has an incredible power inside of you that can only be shined on the rest of the world when you break through the limiting beliefs that have kept you stuck. My experience has shown me that the only way to live a fulfilled life is to continuously grow and develop and to be a contribution and provide service to others. And because I am committed to growing continuously, I choose to take on a belief that life happens for me, not to me. Before I started transforming my life at the age of 29, I had a limiting belief that life was always happening to me. I was unconscious. I didn't know anything about life maybe happening for me. I did not have a relationship with the God of my understanding. I didn't know how to live life on life's terms. But when I started transforming my life, a mentor quickly pointed out that if you believe that life happened to you, you are taking the role of the victim. And victims will always stay stuck and not move forward. So I was given the opportunity to look at my past and look at it with a new interpretation, a different lens, a different perspective. And I went all the way back to my earliest memory as a child. My mother, my father took their little 3-year-old boy to a magical, wonderful place called Disney World. It was not that magical or wonderful for me the first time that I went. My mother had a great idea to put her 3-year-old boy and my father on a roller coaster called Space Mountain. And for those of you that don't know, that Space Mountain is a roller coaster in the dark, and my father was petrified to go on roller coasters. And I was placed on my father's lap, and he held me real tight. But I didn't feel a warm embrace. I didn't feel comfortable. What I felt when my father embraced me was his fear. And the ride went up, down, all around in the dark, and afterwards, I was traumatized. I was angry. I was distrustful on what my mother was going to plan for me next. So immediately when that happened, fear became a way of life for me, and I started taking This belief that I had to walk through life with fear, a distrust of my mother, and my story started to go just like that. When I was 5 years old, my mother and my father took me to this pond to go feed the ducks. From the time I was a little kid, I was an animal lover. And they left me alone at this pond with a loaf of bread. And my parents were off in their car. I don't know where they were, that they were in the car. I don't know what they were doing. But I was alone with a loaf of bread. And here come the ducks. 1 duck, 2 duck, 3 duck, 4. 5 duck, 6 duck, 7 duck more. Next thing you know, there's a whole lot of ducks. Next thing you know, the ducks get a little out of control. Peck, quack, peck, quack, peck, quack, peck, quack. They're coming after me, grabbing the bread. I start to freak out. The next thing you know, the only place I have to go is in the pond. And I'm backed up into the pond with water up this deep, push the loaf of bread away to get the ducks off of me, screaming at my parents, help me, help me, help me. They finally come out of the car. And what are they doing? They're not coming to my rescue. They're laughing at me. I was humiliated. If the roller coaster wasn't bad enough, here I am, and you're laughing at me. Do my feelings not matter? Do these things that happen to me not matter? Am I here for your entertainment? And I started to believe that I was in this world for my mother to make me miserable. And I was in this world like for my mother and father's entertainment. And when I was a little bit older, I went to summer camp for the first time. I was almost 7 years old, and I was sent away to sleepaway camp in North Carolina. And camp wasn't so bad. I was enjoying camp, and 2 weeks after being there, they took the 6, 7, and 8-year-old boys on a camp out to the Pisgah National Forest. And we're on a bus, and we start entering the Pisgah National Forest, and the bus starts going up one of those mountain cliffhanger roads. I mean, the kind where if you're in a bus and you're a little higher up than a car, and you look out the window, you're basically looking down at a gorge. And every kid on the bus is having a great time, having fun, doing what 7-year-olds would do on a bus, spitting spitballs, having a good time. I remember every kid was having a good time, but I was petrified. I was petrified looking out the window of that bus. And we get to the top of the, there was a clearing, and we're camping out, and we're having a good time, and there was a waterfall, and we're playing in the creeks. And the next day, they were going to take 20 kids in an equipment van to a place called Sliding Rock. And I was the last person to get in the bus. And as the bus starts going down this mountain cliffhanger road, it hits a hairpin turn, loses control, and it drops, rolls over in the air, and lands down 80 feet and gets caught by a giant tree. A traumatizing experience. At that moment when it was happening, I could remember myself in that van. I could remember the lights from the sun shining through the trees, and I had a moment of thought. And what I remembered is I'm right. I had something to fear. I was right. And what happened is the counselors that were in the bus, they were unconscious. People were in comas. People were seriously hurt. Nobody died. Me and 2 other children went to get help. And then everybody was taken to the hospital. People were airlifted there, but I got to go to the hospital in a Jeep. And when I got to the hospital, I was checked out and I was physically fine, but I didn't know that I was emotionally scarred. And I got to call Mommy. And I got on the phone and I said, Mommy, 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 when do I get to come home from summer camp? She goes, you're fine. You don't get to go home from summer camp. You get to be there another 6 weeks. We paid for the whole summer. Every other kid got to go home. I didn't get to go home. The way I found salvation was there was a camp counselor. Her name was Evie. She called me her camp boyfriend. She paid attention to me. She validated me. She told me everything was going to be all right. And what I believe she gave me at the moment where I hurt the most in my life, where I was traumatized, where a boy at that age should have his mother's love, what I believe she gave me was everything that was missing in my relationship with my mother. And I didn't want to leave summer camp anymore. And this obsession with having a girlfriend started at a very young age. And when I was 9 years old, I was in 4th grade, I had a crush on a girl named Jody. Jody was the queen of 4th grade. All the little boys thought Jody was so cute and so pretty, but I had a crush on Jody. And I had the courage to pick up that telephone. I was at my grandparents' house, and I normally would do fun things over the weekend at my grandparents', and I'd go fishing, and I'd go to the park, and I would go to the beach, and I'd go to the toy store and do all fun stuff. But this one weekend, I was on the phone the whole time with Jody, and this is back 1980. We still had rotary phones. I remember how many times calling that. Back then, we didn't use area codes. It was a 935 number. I almost could still remember it. And I asked Jody, will you be my girlfriend? And Jody said yes. And I was the happiest boy in the world. I was so happy. I was so excited. I was going to have a girlfriend, and she was going to validate me, and I was going to be all right. I was so happy. And I told a couple of my friends, and I get to school the next morning, and she has her arm around somebody else. I was heartbroken. I was destroyed. I couldn't function at school. There was a hole inside of me. But I looked over at the person she had her arm around, and I said, what is it about him that something must not be good enough about me? At that moment, I started to take on a limited belief that I was not enough. I went through my life in fear. I went through my life not loving myself. I went through my life not being good enough. I was not enough. I didn't know that I mattered. I didn't know that I was loved. I must be unlovable. All those feelings and all those emotions and all that uncomfortability with me led me to a life of 9 years of drug addiction where I nearly killed myself and ended up living in hell and was given the ability to transform my life, to become free of my past, to discover the limiting beliefs that keep us stuck. And when I found a relationship with God and practiced principles in my life and applying spiritual principles in my life, I started to transform who I was and start to discover who I was and started living it. And then when you discover your purpose and live a fulfilled life and know exactly who you are and step into your greatness, you're like exactly where you're supposed to be, feeling what you're supposed to be feeling, experiencing exactly what you're supposed to be experiencing, because God could not have planned that any other way. That is who I'm meant to be. And I've recently done some more transformational work on myself to get to those core beliefs and to learn how to step in my power. And when we eliminate those limiting beliefs, I get to do that work and discover who am I. Because if you ask me who I am, I'm a powerful, authentic, vulnerable, inspirational leader. And if you ask me who I was before I started transforming my life, I would have no idea what to tell you. But the thought of it would make me sick to my stomach. My message to you is to discover who you are. Because that person is beautiful. That person has something to give this world in a monumental way. And when you discover your power, guess what? There's more. When we let go of the past, when we learn to forgive the people that caused us harm, when we just let go and learn to live in the present moment, in the here and now. There is no better moment than right here, right now. Because when we can live in the present moment and receive what we're supposed to receive, we can open ourselves up to a compelling future, which is open to infinite possibility when we're not living in our past. Discover your authentic self and make your mark on this world. The world needs all of you. Thank you.